Fintan, you were at Páirc Uí Chaoimh Saturday night. First inter-county games played back at the new Páirc Uí Chaoimh field. How did the pitch hold up?
Yeah, it looked really good, and I suppose given the travails of it in 2019, it had wanted with all the effort and work, and the fact that it was it was kind of shut down twice during last year. When I suppose you think back to 12 months ago, a lot of people, because those games were on TV, the double header of Cork Waterford, or it was Cork Wexford, in hurling, Cork Kildare football, the pitch was coming up really, really badly, but it did look very, very good last night. And I think that there's kind of a focus that they kind of need a bit of a feel-good story now. They need to kind of get back to putting games on there, because there's obviously a lot of, I suppose, still ongoing issues with the kind of stadium off the pitch. So it was kind of positive from that kind of front.
Yeah. So if we just talk about the games that went on there, the Cork ladies obviously played their first game at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and of course the Cork footballers, and positive result against Offaly, but you'd have to say that Ronan McCarthy at the very least is going to want to win this game. But was it 7-3 behind early on?
Yeah, they were quite poor for about 20 minutes in the first half. Look, they're overwhelmingly favourites to win this division, but the two things about it is that they haven't really handled expectation well over the last couple of years in games that they've been expected to win. Cork, there's been numerous examples of that in football. And the other thing is that they will be seen as a big scalp in that division, because they were in the Super 8s last year. Okay, the draw was favourable for them to get to that far, but you imagine other teams are going to raise their game against them, and you kind of saw that in the first 20 minutes. Offaly, they had a pretty good game plan. They just basically isolated the likes of Bernard Allen and Anton Sullivan. It paid off a lot for them, and and Cork looked in a bit of bother in the way that they were playing. Like one of the big issues with their style of play was that they were kind of breaking the line in attack, but they were getting to within maybe 15 yards of goal, and they didn't really seem to know what to do with it. There was 5 different occasions where a guy was kind of true on goal and kind of looked like he was caught between two minds, put over the bar or go for goals, ended up either getting turnover or blown up for over carrying. So to be kind of 9-8 down at half time, they were probably quite happy with that. But in the second half, the big thing with them was that their use of the ball was far better, far more patient. They kind of played it around and they kind of waited for the gaps, and their subs made a big difference. I mean, they got 9 points off the bench, which is a huge return. Like Michael Hurley came on and got 5 points.
That's out of 20 points in total.
Yeah, so I mean, nearly half of it. He got 5, John O'Rourke got 2, and then a couple of newcomers, Ty Corkery and Colm O'Callaghan, both got scores. So I think it was positive for them in the end that they kind of pulled away. Look, I think it's just pretty much all about results for them at this stage. And the last couple of years, I mean, their starts to the league have been terrible. As McCarthy said, it was the first time in history seasons they've won an opening game. I think they're 2 points from 14 as regards home games over the last couple of seasons in the league. So they had all that kind of weighing over them. So I think it was all about just getting the results. So I think he'll be pleased the fact that they put up 20 points. That I think 5 of the under 20 team that won the All-Ireland last year got game time over the game, but kind of varying degrees of success there. A couple of guys looked nervous, a couple of guys did a bit better and kind of bedded in, and the other plus then was that he had Kieran Sheehan back from Australia, him playing, and Sean Powter back, and Sam Ryan. They've both had really, really bad hamstring injuries, kind of missed the whole of last season, so there was kind of pluses for McCarthy there. But it's pretty much just part one of what 7, as he kind of alluded to. They have Leitrim next week, and I mean, look, given the championship draw, with the fact that they're playing Kerry and the new structure, I mean, promotion just has to be an absolute must. So it's just about kind of getting through it on a game by game basis at this stage.
Because if you're to look at it from a sort of broad strokes, people who don't watch Cork playing that often, they came back on the radar last year, and you thought, this is a team that can push Dublin really close, push Kerry really close in the Munster final. They can't be that far away. You add in Kieran Sheehan, if he hits the ground running after being down at the AFL, if Sean Powter hits the ground running, those are 2 elite sort of players if they hit top form. You'd feel like Cork shouldn't be that far away. Yeah,
well, they definitely added a good bit to it last night. I mean, in the first half, Kieran hit 2 really, really good points in play, and just he's physically kind of ready for it straight away. It's not like there was 220 players in the full forward line, and you could see they were just that, you could see they're just starting out, and they're just there's kind of that rawness about them. And then Sean Powder, he's 3 or 4 kind of years, playing adult senior football, or preparing, I suppose, for adult senior football. Hasn't been playing because of his injury problems, and you could see what he has to offer with his ball carrying. I mean, he was Young Player of the Year nominee in 2017, played international rules that year as well, so there's kind of been flashes of what he can offer. But it kind of goes back to, it's the thing that makes Dublin great, is that their attitude and focus is always brilliant. And I thought McCarthy made a good point during the week. Teams like Cork, like a hardened, more experienced side, he said, can be operating at a bit below par, and they'll just find a way to get through the game and they'll win it. for a team like Cork, if their attitude and their focus isn't spot on, and if they're not kind of on it from the start, they will struggle, and that showed in that kind of middle period of the first half. So, and like that was a big problem last year in the Division 2 games. They kind of start slowly and weren't able to kind of plot their way back into the game. I mean, I don't know, is that a kind of a mental issue? Is it a confidence issue? But that was a change for them last night. But look, the obvious caveat that it is just the start of the league. It is Division 3, and no matter what they do in the league, given what we saw Kerry produce last night, the challenge on the 24th of May, I mean that's going to be the big thing come that. How will the spring, I suppose, have stood to them when it comes to that, what will be an absolute massive step up in class.
Because it seems like the league is now supercharged, because if you don't get up to Division 2, you have the chance of meeting Kerry and maybe getting into Tier 2. That'd be brutal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like especially because I think the way last year ended for the county with the optimism with the underage All-Ireland wins and getting to the Super 8s, so there's a lot riding on it. But I think that'll tell across the board, with the Division 2 relegation battles as that kind of materialises. I think we've three rounds in a row of the Football League. I think after that midway point, you'll kind of see who will be pushing for promotion in Division 3 and who will be battling relegation in Division 2. And then I think the extra significance of that and what's going to be riding on it for various counties who probably mightn't fancy their chances of getting to their provincial final. The safety net will be removed, and that they might have to adjust to life in Tier 2 in the summer.
Did you see any difference in terms of how Cork set up or played? Like Cian O'Neill, who was the Kildare manager, is now in as a selector coach.
Yeah, there was a good bit of width about them, but they weren't really showing that as well until the second half.
And just ask you, did it seem that the reason for that is stretch the other team to create lanes to run up the middle?
Yeah, that was kind of one of the issues. But also, Offaly were kind of bringing a lot of bodies back as well. But it was kind of their attacking play in terms of kind of converting the chances. Like Ian Maguire got through twice for good goal chances, but as McCarthy alludes afterwards, he butchered both of them, blasted it straight down the throats of the keeper, and then there was 4 or 5 times the ball was just over carried, and just it just wasn't really sticking for them up front. Whereas like Offaly were really, really slick. Anton Sullivan, Bernard Allen very good, Cian Johnson, who's been a lot of talk about as well in full forward line. So there was kind of a good bit of threat there. But yeah, I think Cork, there was kind of a good bit more patience in the second half. Kevin Crowley is a guy who's back this year. He was kind of injured for a lot of last year being back. He's a good kind of a ball player, and there was just a bit more that kind of, I suppose, just taking the right option. And like Michael Hurley was a good addition on that front as well, because like his footwork is really, really good in those tight situations. So I think 20 points is a good return for them. It's definitely a departure from this time 12 months ago when I think it was the Kildare game. They were a man up and they were playing a double sweeper, and they only scored I think 10 points at the end of the game. So compared to the start of the league last year to this year, they do look like a team that is a little bit more sure of themselves, and that was a big problem. Started last year and ultimately it cost them because they came too late in the league to try and save themselves from relegation to Division 2.
You mentioned a couple of times the butcher and the goal scorer and opportunities. Do you think when the full team is out and we're in the height of summer with Brian Hurley, maybe Kieran Sheehan if he continues to progress, Luke Connolly, all these type of players, do you think that that's something that could come back to haunt them, or do you think they'll find their flow?
Yeah, well, it was like goals are actually a really good thing that they kind of fast that they had in Championship last year. I mean, I know they conceded 5 against Dublin, but they did score 1 against them. They got 2 against Tyrone. Before that, I think we were about a match. They got 4 against Laois, so they were kind of taking the right options. But the chances that fell last night to Ian Maguire, he's a midfielder. His strength wouldn't be really in the scoring department. And the other big goal chance was Kevin Crowley, a wing back, who blasted it over. So kind of a lot of their more experienced forwards are kind of out at the moment. Like Hurley's injured, Luke Connolly's been eased back after Nemo's campaign, All-Ireland club campaign. Mark Collins is kind of just out for the first couple of rounds of the league. So maybe when you kind of have your first choice kind of strike runners back, that will kind of come, because it was something that they brought into their game last year, which had been kind of absent for the previous couple of years. That kind of clinical join, and I think particularly as you go up the ranks, you're only going to get a couple of these chances in a game, aren't you, against the kind of bigger sides. They would have got 3 obviously against Kerry in the Munster final as well. So kind of taking them is absolutely crucial.
And just a word on Offaly then under John Maughan. Did you see much from them to suggest they could have a decent season?
Well, it's just I suppose they looked really, really good in terms of their attacking, their inside line. and they're very good the way they were kind of pulling out and kind of creating the space for them. The interesting thing for them, I suppose, in terms of the new rules, was how the sin bin actually worked last night. So basically, Bernard Allen got sin bin just before half time when they were leading 9-7. When he came back on into the second half, they were losing 12-9. So the extra man did show there. So I think that probably shows that, I think it's a bigger deterrent than the black card, than kind of putting a guy in. Especially I think at the top level, the black cards, unless you're losing one of your absolute mainstays of your team. Teams have such big panels nowadays that they can just slot another guy in an option. But you could see either side of half time how the 15v14 thing kind of tolls. Cork probably just looked a little bit fitter and probably had a bit more off the bench to kind of power on. But for about 50-55 minutes, I think Offaly were kind of well there. I think they'll be looking to kind of get Cian Johnson. He kind of didn't probably impact as much. A lot has been talked about him, I suppose, how he wasn't available for the last couple of years, but definitely I think for the Division, like particularly that full forward line, that looks quite decent and carries a good bit of threat. I suppose they were in the O'Byrne Cup final as well last Saturday. Could have put a good bit into that kind of pre-season, so maybe that kind of told when it came to the last 15-20 minutes last night.
And like in terms of those new rules that you mentioned, like that's a fair swing in the space of 10 minutes, a 5-point turnaround in that game. But I was looking at one of the clips for the attacking mark, and I saw a ball being kicked to Michael Murphy, like an innocuous ball from midfield just inside the 45, and it just seemed like the most ridiculous thing to get a free shot from. Did you see much of that in the Cork Offaly game?
Yeah, I saw that clip as well last night from Ballybuffmain, and yeah, it looked, it wasn't a particularly, I suppose, kind of a defence-splitting pass.
It's rewarding nothingness.
And a feed a guy close to goal, and that's the kind of, I suppose, vision that people have. Well, they say they have for the attacking mark, isn't it? That's what they're going to reward. There was a couple of times in the Cork game, like Michael Hurley had one in the second half, and I think it was Allen scored one in the first half for Offaly, but in general, it didn't really impact at all. I'd have a lot of reservations about it, and I think you were at the briefing, were you, during the week? It seems very convoluted to a lot of people. God help club referees, the way it's going to go. But it is interesting then to kind of look at a game and you come away from it thinking, that didn't really have any bearing at all. Like as I said, it was the sin bin of the new rules. You could see the impact that had. In terms of kind of shaping the match and kind of, I suppose, swinging the initiative in the direction of Cork as it went on. But I'd have reservations about the advanced mark as regards what it's going to add to the game.
Yeah, because you see people saying, well, look, the world didn't cave in just with the new rules in last night, but I don't think that's it. I think it's when it gets to a game that is decisive in terms of someone's season, one of these rules will be exploited or it'll backfire on what was actually brought in for. That'd be my concern. Dublin versus Kerry last night, unbelievably enthralling game for the end of January, the two teams drawn. Did anything stick out to you from that game? Even the little bit of needle at the end where the teams were pushing and dragging each other. Dublin's, they worked that score so well to go ahead the free. They held on to the ball for a couple of minutes, and then we saw the cynicism again. What stood out to you from that game?
Well, I suppose you just mentioned the cynicism there. Look, elite teams do what they have to do, but it is interesting that the best club side in the country, Corofin, and the best county side in the country, Dublin, within 6 days have showed that when it comes down the stretch in Croke Park and you're protecting a narrow lead, they will do whatever they can. But I did think it was great to see the free being brought in. I know people were I think some Dublin fans might be too happy with Sean Hurston's performance. I saw there was a bit of commentary along that way.
Well, if it's that last free, Niall Scully kicked the ball away after the whistle was going, so what can you do? It has to be brought in.
But I thought it was a brilliant deterrent. I saw Tommy Walsh talking during the week about GA rules, and it's something I would love to see, the Aussie rules style, that it's brought up 50 yards. If there's that kind of a cynical drag down in another area of the fields, because that's one of the most blatant cynical things. Look, I understand the team is ahead and they want to protect at all costs, but for the overall health of the game and the good of the game, it is a serious issue. A couple of things that stood out. I thought it was really important for Kerry to get something out of it. I know it's only the end of January and all that, but these two look like they're ahead of the pack at the moment. You saw what it did for them last year, I suppose, winning that game down in Tralee, and the kind of I suppose you think, the 2017 league final, they probably didn't get a bounce off that because they ended up not meeting Dublin that summer. But when they beat them in Tralee last year and then they met them in the All-Ireland final, you could see they were able to kind of go toe-to-toe with them, and they were, I suppose, maybe confident and kind of psychologically ready for it. I think given how well they played for a lot of yesterday, I think to have lost it, I think that would have stung a little, as much as Peter Keane probably would have, fobbed it off and said, look, it's only January and all that, I think it would have hurt a little. So I think they were glad to get something out of it. it showed as well the game something that we already knew is like one of the great things about this Dublin team is how they go after teams in the league. I mean, they're not that long back off their holiday in Bali. Look, they've won it all, but yet the way they kind of relentlessly hunt it down. And then I think you can see on their side and a bit on the Kerry side how a little bit tweaks what happens in the winter. So on the Kerry side, East Kerry win the County Senior Championship. Knock on to that. Obviously, David Clifford, captain. We all know about his role, but look, he just steps up to the leadership role again. And how they bring in someone like Liam Kearney, who's about 2014, I think he captained Kerry to the All-Ireland minor team. I thought he was a really, really good player at underage, and he looked comfortable yesterday. So I wonder, is that going to be kind of a sign of them kind of adding to their mix? On the Dublin side, then. Look, you have the reliables like Brian Fenton was absolutely outstanding. Like, I mean,
Kieran Kilkenny at the end as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the two of them, like Dessie Farrell knows he can build his team around them and what they can do for him. But I thought it was interesting, Aaron Byrne getting some game time, Conor McHugh starting. So obviously he coached them both in the final last year, but he also was in charge of them at under 21 level. So you wonder, is this, look, they say you can't stand still, you have to kind of move on, and they were the two leading sides last year, and is this maybe a sign of the little kind of tweaks that they're going to make to their squads, and maybe kind of portents of or kind of pointers of what might be to come for the rest of the league and for the summer?
I'd say plenty of us that have been covering Dublin underage teams over the years, and especially if you saw Conor McHugh playing for Na Fianna last year, that game against Ballyboden in particular, you would have thought this is a guy who would have stepped up by now, and he'd probably be a leading light for pretty much every other county.
Yeah, he would. He probably suffers from just the amount of competition in that forward line. I mean, like, who's he going to displace? Like I suppose he was the same vintage as Paul Mannion, who probably just got in ahead of him. And then next thing, Conor Callaghan came up behind him. And he was obviously an absolute superstar talent. And then, like, Dean Rock's importance to the team has kind of grown and grown. So, I mean, that's your full forward line. You also got Paddy Andrews there, Kevin McMenamin. But look, he definitely looks like. I mean, you mentioned that kind of club display. There's been a couple of other league games. I think it was a Mayo game a couple of years ago in Croke Park. Like, his ability to kind of kick over points, but it's just going to be difficult to see where he's going to start, how he's going to force us into it, because he seems to be an out and out inside man. Kind of get the ball to him and he'll swing it over, as opposed to maybe a guy that can do a shift in the half forward line. So he's trying to get into a very, very crowded and competitive line of that Dublin team.
If I was Kerry, there's a couple of reasons I'd be concerned. Number one, because Dublin are back from their pre-season later, you'd be looking at Dublin being right there to win that game, even though they're at maybe 50% and Kerry are at maybe 70%, if we're to just pluck numbers out of the sky. Another thing would have been Evan Comerford stepped into the goals, really assured performance, whereas Shane Ryan, who we know has lots of talent, towards the end of the game there was 3 or 4 kickouts that went really awry, and like in the white hot heat of summer, he's going to need to be able to nail those. So that would be a concern. Yeah,
it would be, but it's not the first time Dublin have gone after a keeper and really kind of put the pressure on the kick out and kind of done that squeeze. And like once they kind of get a run on you, I mean, there was one went straight to, maybe it wasn't Fenton, but kind of around the 70-minute mark, he kind of pinged it and it went straight to a Dublin player.
Another one went to Shane Enright's ankles, which is and he got away with it. Like, Enright somehow managed to get away with the ball, but that's very harem scarum. Like, there's such a momentum shift when you can see the score and you gift one as well.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to as well, I suppose, this is the environment you have to get used to. He's taking the kickouts in front of the hill. Yeah. Okay, maybe in the summer there might be a few Kerry fans in there. There wasn't any last night, so you kind of got to adjust to all that kind of things, so I'd say there's a lot of learning in that for Kerry last night, and Peter Keane will be kind of delighted that that's the kind of exposure of a game you're going to get, because you look at some of the other fixtures. I think they're at home to Meath and Killarney, for example. You imagine that's not going to be as testing an atmosphere as last night. So yeah, but I think it definitely does it flags a couple of areas that they kind of need to work on. But you'd wonder, I suppose, one thing I'd say about the Ryan thing, like you think, say Jack Barry was playing earlier that day for Naguil yesterday. David Moran's going to miss the league. Diarmuid O'Connor was actually playing for the Gael as well. So that's kind of 3 guys who started in the All-Ireland final last year, 3 big kick-out options. You imagine if they're there, that will surely help them a little bit as regards having something more, I suppose, experienced and kind of a few guys to aim at.
A final word then on James O'Donoghue. If he was very impressive at times against Dublin, but if he comes back into the team this year and he stays fit, and I mean that has been the curse for him since he got Player of the Year in 2014. If he stays fit, you're probably going to have number 1 man marker going after David Clifford, number 2 man marker going after Paul Ganey. He's actually probably not going to be tagged by the toughest marker either. It could be the year for him to explode back into it.
Yeah, and I think they'll be really happy with him last night. 3 points from play. But the kind of talent is undoubted, but like you said, it is the fact of just kind of getting that fitness and all that. He had a big club in actually in the last year, the divisional thing in Kerry. The O'Donoghue Cup was a big thing in East Kerry, and Legion was their first time winning it in over 40 years, I think. And I saw that he was playing very well in that. Like that competition went on till December, so I wonder is that kind of giving him a little bounce kind of going into the year. You just see, could they play the three of them in a full forward line? I mean, like, it's not really the done thing anymore in the GA, is it? Like, having that kind of a traditional kind of setup. I suppose Gainey did kind of work back a lot last year, didn't he? And could have done it. He has, I think, played in the half forward line for his club. Could he maybe play at the edge of the D and maybe float a bit more? But it's a nice little headache for Peter Keane to have. Killian Spillane probably another one. He came back into the team last night, so no more than what we were saying about Conor McHugh. Giving Dublin kind of another option for the full forward line. Imagine James O'Donoghue is going to give Peter Keane that kind of little bit of an extra headache as well for his attack.
Great stuff, Fintan. Cheers.
No worries.
Thanks for watching Our Game. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe.